Okay, beautiful.
Now,
Okay,
the
here we
First
go.
Coast's most accurate forecast from the First Coast News Weather Team, certified by Weather Rate, sponsored by AC Designs.
Doesn't mean that you're going to get wet tomorrow evening, but starting tomorrow, I do think we're going to begin to see some showers and thunderstorms. Now, notice you don't see Ross with me today, and that's because Ross Muma is spending the day up in Waycross, talking to you folks up there. Of course, you were hit hard by Helene, Idalia the year before, but we're talking about what did happen, what maybe folks in Waycross wish they had done better to prepare, maybe what they did do good to prepare for the hurricane. Helene, by the way, produced some of the highest hurricane force winds Waycross has ever experienced, which is pretty significant, of course, considering how far inland they are, how far inland you are. And then hopefully we can use their experience to help all of us better prepare for hurricanes. Doesn't mean that we'll be hit by a hurricane this year, but if there are some things that we can do now, spring, summer, before there's even a threat, before the adrenaline gets going, now's a pretty good time to do it. Now, Lee Southwick is working right now, but she has been talking to some school students about Earth Day. Lou Turner, who's going to be our new chief meteorologist, he, of course, did Good Morning Jacksonville this morning. He was working here till about 1:30 in the afternoon. And finally, Robert Spetta is getting some much-deserved time off. Okay, let's get back and talk more about the weather because that's what I'm supposed to do. So as we go through the night tonight, sunset is almost 8 p.m. Will not be a clear night, that's for sure. We'll have cirrus clouds out there, but for you sky gazers, you might be able to pick out Mars and Jupiter in the western sky as the night goes on. And then, of course, if there's any breaks in the clouds, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but Venus continues to put on just an amazing show. So what about on to Wednesday? Well, Wednesday, again, another warm morning, relatively speaking. Again, our average airport low is 57 degrees this time of the year, looking for the airport to drop down to about 63. But notice out around the river and the beaches, more like the middle 60s, even up toward about 70 degrees. And then well inland, where when the air is dry, temperatures there can be easily 10, sometimes 20 degrees cooler. Notice tomorrow morning, not all that much cooler. And that's a sign that even the moisture is getting into inland areas as well. And that's one of the reasons why we think we'll begin to see the return of thunderstorms tomorrow. Now, I'm going to say it again because I want to emphasize that we're talking about the return of thunderstorms tomorrow simply because it's been dry for a long time for many of us. For many of us, we've gone over 10 days without any rain. A lot of us could use the rain. If you have to get some outdoor work done tomorrow, maybe you don't want rain. The main threat for the rain and the thunderstorms tomorrow will be Georgia. We'll get back to that in a moment. Just wanted to show you the overall thermodynamic situation around the nation. That is, we want to pick out where the fronts are because although we are getting, of course, later into the spring season, and I mention that because once we get into summer, really tough for cool fronts to make it here. But still, with us being in spring, fronts will still make it to the First Coast. There's two fronts sitting there. If you kind of point it out. We'll paint the front for you in a bit. But one is sitting from Charlotte on over to about Atlanta and Birmingham, and that's about ready to stall. And then another front, and this is the front that will drop into our area later Sunday or Monday. We're trying to figure that out. That's way up there toward the big sky country of Montana. But let's talk about Earth Day. In my opinion, and I'm probably coming from the meteorological point of view, the biggest environmental problem, I think, crisis is the greenhouse gas crisis. Of course, talking about the amount of CO2, the methane, and the other gases that we're putting into the atmosphere. 40 million metric tons of CO2 just since 1990. That is, we're 80% above the 1990 levels. So although we're as a people on Earth and in this country, some of us are trying to do something about not putting as much in the way of greenhouse gases. Unfortunately, the amount that continues to pump into the atmosphere continues to rise. Now, there are no doubt about it, other cycles, natural cycles. There's the solar cycle, there's La Nina and El Nino, and other natural cycles that cause temperatures, energy levels to rise and fall through the years, through the decades, through the centuries. But it has now been shown by peer review that what we're doing to the Earth, to the atmosphere, to the oceans, is 10 times faster and stronger than anything that's happening naturally. So despite the fact that for some reason some people still think it's a hoax, it is happening, folks. And I think especially if we're concerned about our kids, our grandkids. I was just reminded my mom has 10 great-grandkids. So if you care about our kids or grandkids or our great-great-grandkids, we need to focus on that greenhouse gas crisis. But to be fair to Earth Day 2025, the focus is on simply trying to decrease the use of our plastic, because that use definitely impacts every human on Earth. Okay, back to meteorology and forecasting. So I think this computer model does a pretty good job. It shows a lot of clouds there. Remember, they're cirrus clouds, folks. And although it feels humid on the surface, there's a dry layer of air between about 3,000 feet and 15,000 feet. And that's why, again today, despite all those clouds, we're not expecting any showers or thunderstorms to form. But during the day tomorrow, there'll be a little more moisture. There'll be a little more sun, so temperatures will heat up a bit. And where the sea breezes converge, and if you're new to the area, you're going to hear this terminology more frequently as we head towards summer, because frequently it's where the sea breezes converge that the highest chance of showers and even thunderstorms will form. And what I mean by that is if you look closer, there's a lot going on. If you look closely on the map, you'll see the arrows going from east to west from the ocean, the Atlantic, and then from west to east, generally speaking, or southwest to northeast, from the Gulf of Mexico. So by tomorrow afternoon at about this time, those are the two sea breezes, and they're coming together, and where they converge, there'll be some showers, might even be a few thunderstorms. Now again, notice where they are. They will be well to the west of what we call the Jackson metro area. But for those of you over southeastern Georgia, especially over interior southeastern Georgia, and then maybe over North Florida out toward I-75, it does look like some showers and thunderstorms will develop. So when will that change in a big way? Well, we have to go to the continental, or at least a look at the weather map over the U.S. So one of the reasons why we'll begin to see at least a few showers and thunderstorms tomorrow is the close proximity of what was a pretty significant front. So the front tomorrow afternoon that you're going to see draped from Cape Hatteras to Charlotte and Atlanta, and then over down to Galveston and Corpus Christi there in the Lone Star State. That was once a very strong front. Produced not only a big temperature difference, but that temperature difference produced flooding rains and wind damage, especially over the weekend from, just think of the Arklatex region. So that front's closer, but it's much weaker. So it's going to be enough to trigger a few isolated thunderstorms tomorrow, mostly southeast Georgia and out toward I-75. But it's pretty much going to stall there. And so that's why we're just going to see a few isolated thunderstorms over the next several days. It won't be until that next front that's farther to the north. Now, by Thursday, it's going to be dropping south of Chicago. So it's a long way off. I say that for two reasons. Number one, it's a long way off for those of you that might be traveling. Number two, as you can imagine, the farther off a weather system is, the tougher it is to really nail it down on the forecast. So there's a lot of ifs in the forecast, but it does look like the frontal system that'll be dropping south of Chicago on Thursday will be dropping into our area late Sunday and Monday. and that should cause a more widespread increase in showers and thunderstorms for the Jacksonville metropolitan area. A lot of ifs in that part of the forecast. So let's get back to take it day by day. So here's how Wednesday will look around the area. Again, for the Jackson metro area, and when I say the Jackson metro area, that's Nassau, Duval, St. John's, and Clay counties. And I say that because that's about 90% of our population. But even for those of you over coastal Georgia, so up there toward Camden and Glenn counties, probably if any thunderstorms form, they'll be developing a little farther inland, more out toward Highway 301. And in North Florida, more out toward I-75 on this Earth Day edition. Thank you, Bella. Of our forecast here on 2025. Okay, for those of you lucky enough to be near the water, on the water, in the water tomorrow, on what many of us call a work and school day, notice the surf and the river temperature continue to rise. Look at the river temperature now, 78 degrees. I would suspect the river temperature is going to be up to 80 by the end of the week, and I think the surf temperature is going to be in the middle 70s by the end of the week. And of course, all of that feels good. Fishing tends to become better. But that does mean, of course, there's more energy building toward what eventually will be hurricane season. But for now, things are nice and quiet. For you surfers out there or anybody else that likes the motion in the ocean, we've had a bit of a wind chop. For those of you who don't surf, that just means, yeah, there's been something to surf, but it's been very disorganized. When we start seeing more like a 9, see that 9S? That means 2 to 3 foot surf at a 9-second period. And when those numbers get a little bit larger, from 5 to 6 to 7, where they've been to 8, 9, the surf becomes, even at the same size, becomes a little more fun. Now, for you boaters that are going to be offshore, 2 to 4 foot seas, which it's still going to be kind of choppy out there, especially with the afternoon sea breeze, but compared to how it's been, especially over the weekend, the ocean is actually going to smooth down a bit. We're looking at the tides as well, so low tide 11:09, so that means for those of you who just want to take a stroll on the beach, and I'm talking about the beaches from the Golden Isles all the way down to Crescent Beach, lots of beach middle of the day, because our tides right along our beaches really only vary by about 30 to 45 minutes, with then high tide late in the afternoon. Now the rip current risk is always a concern, but if you're thinking about your family and you're wondering when the rip current risk is worst, it's when we're going from high tide to low tide, because if you can picture, that's when the ocean, even itself, is going out. So notice tomorrow afternoon, there will be a rip current risk, but notice during the afternoon tomorrow, the tide will actually be coming in. Okay, on to Thursday we go. We'll continue with just isolated thunderstorms. You know that icon there in the top left-hand part of that graphic? That's really our attempt to say, overall, how will skies look? So notice that although I'm saying isolated thunderstorms, I'm not showing you a raindrop. So that means really for many of us and for most of us in the metro, it's going to be another dry day. But just want to let you folks know, Highway 301, which of course is far western Duval County, western Clay County, western Nassau County, and then you can take it north through Georgia, southwest through Florida. That's going to be about the demarcation, whereas the sea breeze comes in. Notice we'll have an easterly wind of about 7 to 17, and then we have the heat of the day, so it's adding more energy. Those clouds can begin to build, and then the Gulf Coast sea breeze comes east. Those two will probably converge. Remember the sea breeze convergence? They'll converge west of Highway 301. So it looks like, at least to us, and looking at the very latest to me, that we're just talking about isolated thunderstorms mostly west of Highway 301. On to Friday we go, and notice we're still talking about isolated. Notice the icon. We're still talking about most of us staying dry. Temperatures really not changing that much. No doubt about it. Temperatures well above average. There's been some discussion about record heat. I think the only real threat for record heat, at least from now through Friday, will be for those out toward I-75, talking about both Florida and Georgia, that high temperatures out there because you're away from the cooling effects, moderating effects of the sea breeze. You might see temperatures get up to near about 90. Nonetheless, though, especially for those of you that are watching that AC bill, because the morning and the afternoon temperatures are going to be running about 10 degrees above average, unless you're adjusting that thermostat, we will be producing a higher than average AC bill with those warmer temperatures. All right, for the Jackson metro area, we start to see the heat build. And the reason for that is check out the winds. The winds at least, or the breeze in the morning becomes southwesterly. So that means the moderating effects of the sea breeze is less and arrives later. So although I'm showing the airport, remember that official temperature, that's the airport, going up to 88 degrees, there will be spots in Duval County and many other areas near, let's say, the I-95 corridor. We're going to be getting up to near 90 degrees. So not quite record heat, but we'll be a little closer to record heat on Saturday. All right, Jumbo Shrimp are in town. They've already had their game today. And because, remember, where we think the thunderstorms will be, just isolated, but to the west of ViStar Ballpark. So it sure looks to me like they'll be playing ball. Now, of course, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, there's raw evening games. Yeah, it's going to be warm, but certainly not as hot as it can be during the summer. And remember, every one of those days, the breeze is going to be out of the east. And if you haven't been to the ballpark, that means, number one, you're going to be in the shade. There's a few spots where not in the shade because they've expanded it so much. But if you're sitting around the field, especially between first and third, you'll be in the shade and you'll feel the sea breeze coming at you. So looks like to me pretty good conditions watching the Jumbo Shrimp. Now, I do want to emphasize what's going to happen at Flagler College. Flagler College there in St. Augustine, they're going to kick off Science Week, and then it's going to run from the 27th through the 30th. All kind of activities going on. But I must admit, I'm also bringing it up because they've invited me to come down there and talk on the topic of forecasting, the challenges of communicating the weather in a changing world. And if you really think about that title, there's a lot of areas we can go on that. So they're going to let me talk for a little bit, and then some students are going to ask me questions, which I love, because this way we'll talk about what students and maybe others want. But the public is invited, so the public can come down there to Flagler College. That's 4 to 5 on Sunday to kick off Science Week, and we'll have more details on that as we go through the week. So speaking of the week, here we go. I'm going to put it all together for you. So if you just plain are only concerned if there's a day in which most of us are going to get rain, I don't see it. Remember, those numbers up there, that's not us saying there's a chance of rain. That's us saying that this is how much of the area we think could receive rain and or possibly a thunderstorm. So notice on Wednesday, Thursday, we think about 20% of us will have a shower or a thunderstorm. But again, most of those over inland areas, and what I mean by inland, pretty much to the west of Highway 301. Then notice on Friday, if anything, a slight decrease. Still a couple isolated showers and thunderstorms there. Now by Saturday, because we will have the land breeze lasting longer, the few isolated storms that do develop could even happen near the I-95 corridor. Okay, here we go to Sunday and Monday. Remember we were talking about that cool front that on Thursday will be dropping south of Chicago. So that's the front that's going to weaken, but it does look like it's going to drop into our area. So that's why I'm going for an increase in coverage for showers and thunderstorms on Sunday and Monday. Now, if you have outdoor plans on Sunday, right now it looks like the higher risk of those thunderstorms would be later in the afternoon and the evening. But I do have to tell you that the two best computer models, in my opinion, that are they're long-range computer models, so beyond about 4 days. Both of them are more aggressive with the front. So both of them bring the front into and push through our area Sunday and Monday. Whereas yesterday, both of those models weren't really doing that. That's my way of saying, number one, that adds iffiness to the forecast. But then number two, if that consistently holds, then we may, by tomorrow or Thursday, might be saying maybe 60% of us are going to get showers and thunderstorms later Sunday and Monday. But I do feel confident, at the very least, if you're wondering, okay, I want to make plans outdoors this weekend, but I want to pick the day in which my chances of rain are lowest, I would pick Saturday over Sunday. If you're making plans all the way ahead to early next week, it looks like Tuesday will have lower rain chances than Monday. Now notice those morning lows in the 60s, starting to warm. Looks like the hottest days will be this weekend, at least in the Jackson metro area. Sunday's high of 90 will depend on when that front arrives. Right now I'm thinking the front's going to arrive early in the afternoon. But again, that's a very iffy part of the forecast. What I do feel confident about is there's nothing in the tropics to worry about. Maybe that's an easy one to say, but still it is nice to say. And of course, this is Earth Day. 2025, and globally they're asking all of us to do what we can as far as using less plastic, and if we have to use plastic more than once. Use that reusable plastic. In fact, that's why I'm wearing my tie today. It's of the earth and all of us kids holding hands and smiling, hopefully making the earth and the water and the air we breathe a better place for our kids and our grandkids and our great-grandkids. Okay, Bella, thank you very much. We, of course, will continue this streaming on weather through the days. And folks, love to hear your questions. If you ever have any questions, send them to us. All kind of different ways to do it. We'll read them, and we would love to focus on what you want to focus on. I'll be, hopefully I'll be live. I'll be on the news tonight doing the weather at 5, 5:30, 6, and 7. Ross will be here tonight at 11.